Hello, good afternoon, welcome back to another Saturday stream here on Tech Ambrosia. Apologies for the mess behind me. It's not gotten better. It's probably not going to get better for a while. Anyway, today we are looking at a weird little Compaq board. Let me switch over to it, y'all can see it. This little guy is, it came in a variety of Compaq Presarios in the mid-late 90s. It is socket 7. You can see it's got 3 ISA slots and one, yes, that is a PCI slot. It just looks real grungy. We've got onboard S3 graphics. That is a Trio 64 with 2 megs of RAM. And interestingly enough, you might notice the DIMM slot here. That's not SD RAM. That is an FPM DIMM. Which, not great, but thankfully there's 16 megabytes of RAM on board. So, I bought this board about 6 months ago to see if it would be maybe an interesting recommendation for like building your first retro PC. But since then, obviously, it's been 6 months. There's been no video on it, so it's not. I don't think so. But it is really interesting. I think we should take a look at it. So that's what we're going to do on today's stream. Anyway, let's go and say hi to all the folks in chat. Hello, hello, hello. Retro Vance, hello, welcome to the stream. Jack68K, hello, welcome to the stream. Ryzen 9 3900 XT is back, welcome. You bet, you know we're going to put a Pentium MMX in there and a K6. Timo, hello, welcome to the stream. Timo says, Compaq multimedia motherboard, yes. This went into those black Compaq Presarios with the speakers on the front of the case. Yeah, they were all over in the 90s. Ian Scott is here, hello, welcome. Blake DMC is here. And Blake says, woo, finally, I'm an early bird. Welcome to the start of the stream. Timo says the IDE cable looks crispy. It's a pretty standard 80 conductor IDE cable. Blake says, yuck, Compaq. I had bad experience with those PCs at schools, but if I owned one of those, I'd probably get it to run better. And yeah, it's exactly what we're going to do today. It's a pretty bog standard Intel 430VX chipset. And we've got one PCI slot to play with, and you know what that means. You know what it means if we've got one PCI slot to play with. I've got my Voodoo 3 PCI. We're going to stuff it in there and see what it does. Ian Scott says, I built my first retro PC with this board. It has a lot of good stuff on board. It does. It really does. We've got an onboard, like I said, there's an onboard S3 Trio 64, which is pretty reasonable for like DOS and 2D graphics. It's not like the fastest thing out there, but it's not bad. It's very compatible. We've also got an onboard ESS audio drive, PCI sound card chip, and Compaq did their homework on it, and it's all hooked up and works in DOS. You do have to load a driver for it. You have to load a TSR for it, but you can load the driver high, so it doesn't take up your conventional memory, and it does work. I was testing it this morning. We should take a look and see how it runs. And yes, Ian says it just doesn't fit into a regular case. And yes, you can see I've got, if I go back to the bench, this poor thing, it is sitting in one of my test benches that I have lopped the end off of because it's almost baby AT. You can see these 2 screws fit into baby AT, but these 2 here, this one, and there's one over here you can't quite see under the IDE cable and power cable. Not even close to anything AT or ATX. They make no sense whatsoever. Compaq used this screw layout for a couple of boards. There's a Pentium 2 board that fits this same form factor that looks like the same screw layout. So I might try and make a test bench for these kinds of boards, these Compaq boards. But it's going to mean I need a bigger printer because this is the maximum width that my printer can print, which is obviously longer than where this screw is up here, and then this screw over here. So I can't make a test bench for it right now with my A1 Mini. But I'm not planning on keeping the A1 Mini forever. We'll see what I end up deciding on, but I'm thinking about upgrading sometime in May, maybe May, June. We'll see. I8386SX is here. It says Compaq goodness. Welcome to the stream. Yes, we've got some OEM Compaq shenanigans. Seeing this board on eBay was, really piqued my interest because it's got that slot there, that PCI slot that doesn't look like a PCI slot. I don't think there's anything abnormal about it. I put some cards in it. It seems to work fine. It's just disgusting. I think that's why it's not white anymore. It's just gross. But it works okay. Like I said, I mentioned the DIMM slot in it is not SD RAM. It is fast page mode DIMM. We've got a couple of expansion sockets to add more RAM to the Trio 64. And yeah, you can see just poking out over here the Intel logo for the 430VX. That's actually the South Bridge chip. North Bridge is under this massive cables here. Oh, the thing that the cables are obscuring is one of the reasons that I bought the board in the first place. And that is a coast module. And it is a pain to get out of the board. But that is an honest-to-God cash on a stick module. Look at that. It's the real deal. It mostly works. I'm going to have to stick it back in the board, and it probably won't work on the first boot, because it's real temperamental. But that is 256K of level 2 cash. On a stick. Cash on a stick. So, I'll stick this back in here. This socket is the worst. Feels like you're breaking things every time. Every single time. Obviously, you see the power connector is AT. This header up here is for buttons. That's what it's labeled on the silk screen. I can only imagine that that's maybe volume and turbo button, but I don't know. I haven't plugged anything into it. It turns on when you turn on the power, just like any other AT motherboard would. So why don't we do that? I've got VGA into the built-in graphics. We've got sound connected here on the built-in sound. You can see the little ESS chip right here. That's our audio drive. It's an 1887, I think. That's what Windows thinks it is anyway. Seems to work fine. So let's power it up and see what it does. Switch over to the capture card here. There we go. Okay, so we'll power it on. So in here at the moment, I've just got a Pentium non-MMX 133. So there are a couple of wrinkles about the board. We've got jumpers on the board to set voltage and multiplier, but no frontside bus speeds. So not even lower frontside bus speeds. We're stuck at 66 megahertz, unless we set FSB. And you can see that's the clock gen chip right there. So maybe set FSB would work. So we'll boot into DOS first and run, because I know Ryzen 9 is going to want SpeedSys, so we'll do that first. So we'll run the benchmarks and SpeedSys. Let's see if it recognizes our cache. Otherwise I'm just going to have to reboot it and reseat that cache. Yep, there we go. It sees the cache. The search dog is over in the way. Hey Windows XP search dog, do you have anything to say? Oh yeah, you do. Alright. I think I'll just take the Vaporwave today. I mean, the first option's really nice, but I don't know how viable it is. So yeah, we've got our 256K of level 2 caches working, and 8K of level 1 on a non-MMX Pentium. And you see everything is showing up just fine. 133.26 megahertz. It doesn't even underclock the Pentium, so that's awesome. Oh, our voltage selection is 3.3 volts down to 2.8 volts. Although, looking at the jumpers, we're missing one. We should have one more selection, and I don't know what it is. I did not have a chance this morning to find the voltage regulator chip and like look up what it's capable of doing. I've done that on a couple of other boards and found like, you know, hidden voltages that you can apply just by changing the jumpers around. Off-the-shelf components. Alright, so there's speed this. And you can see with the Pentium 133 in here, if we run a quick Quake in Modex, so just 320 by 200, it's pretty zippy. Nothing really wrong about it. This would be a pretty nice way to experience Quake. Of course, I think these boards were. I think Compaq released these boards in like 97, 98. So if you hadn't played Quake by then, you know, by 98 it was 2 years old. It was like the biggest deal in PC gaming, so if you hadn't played it by 1998, this would be a pretty good way to experience it. 32.5 frames per second on the onboard video with a Pentium 133. Ryzen 9 says, thank you for running SpeedSys. You're welcome. Alright, so. We'll demo the ESS. It's not terrible. So yeah, that's not bad. Not bad. I like the ESS cards. Honestly, I think they're pretty decent. I know they get a lot of hate, but I think they sound fine. I think they sound fine. So, I've got a little box full of CPUs here, and of course I have the Voodoo 3. So I think let's just get started making this thing faster. The first thing I want to see is, you know, I love my Voodoo 3 as a 3D graphics card, but it's also really good as a 2D graphics card. Like the VGA and the 2D engine on this card, not bad, honestly. I have some spicy opinions about the Voodoo 3 existing at all, but it is at least a pretty good implementation all around. So why don't we throw this in first? See if it gets us any performance increases. Let me run a few more benchmarks in DOSBench, and we'll see if just changing the VGA card, VGA card, calling a Voodoo a VGA card. Someone's gonna probably drag me out back and shoot me. So let's run a couple more benchmarks. We'll do 3D bench number 2 here for the faster PCs. We should get a lot of frames per second. Yes, indeed. 114.6. We'll do Chris's in 320. .97 frames per second in Chris's. and then we'll do PC player. Good old PC player. And there's our benchmark, 34.7. Alright. I didn't write any of those down, I hope anybody else did. But, let's see what happens when we throw the voodoo in it. Now, while this would be like a pretty classic setup to throw the Voodoo one I have behind me in here, my pass-through cable for it isn't long enough to reach from the VGA on the board all the way to the Voodoo one, unfortunately. But also, it's just a Voodoo one. They were super cool for their day, and then they got obsolete really quickly. Alright. Run some more DOS bench. So, we'll start off with 3D bench. We got, what, 114 on the last one? Same, 114.9. I think it's a little bit faster, but it's basically the same. Not bad. It's a good result for that S3. Do a quick Chris's. That was 97. Although, you know, I should probably run SpeedSys and make sure that the level 2 cache is still working. It may have turned off, who knows? Oh, there we go. We went from 97 to 99. So that's not bad. And then PC Player. Blake DMC asks if it's possible to get a long pass-through cable. Yeah, I mean, you can just make them. I don't know how, but I know I've seen people make just the pass-through VGA cables. 34.8. So this is basically the same. Basically the same. So that's not a bad showing for that S3 card that's on board. Like, that's not terrible. So we'll run Quake here. Again, 320 by 200. I think this is probably going to run to about the same speed too. I give S3 a hard time, but like their 2D cores are pretty decent. $32.7. Just about the same. Cool. Alright, and then yes, SpeedSys. Did our level 2 cache kick itself out of the frontside bus or not? Looks like it did not. Yep, there we go. Nope, we've still got level 2 cache. Not bad. Memory bandwidth of a whole 166 megabytes per second. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Blake DMC wants to see Windows 95 run on a Pentium 2. It does run pretty well. It does run pretty well. In fact, you can run Windows 95 on too fast of a processor unless you patch it. It can pretty quickly get away from you. I think I've got the drivers on here for Windows. Let's reboot and boot into Windows. I was running this in a previous machine. I have Windows 98 already on it. Like, 98's a little bit too much for this hardware. Ideally, you'd want to run Windows 95 on this. But I didn't feel like reinstalling Windows 95 again this morning. Whatever I tested this thing on last with this SD card, I put the Voodoo 3 in there as well. That sounds about right. I think it was all that Cyrix overclocking. I think that's what we were doing with this with this SD card image. Remember the Cyrix overclocking? That was fun. I never in my life thought I'd see a Cyrix hit 250 megahertz. I think Windows has crashed. Good old Windows. See if it'll work the second time. Well, there we go. Just needed some encouragement. Yeah, yeah. The Cyrix that had the with like the black metal IHS on the top of it. Only 16 megs of RAM, so we're kind of pushing it as far as Windows 98 here. Alright, we've got drivers. So the first and most obvious thing is you go from software rendered Quake to GL Quake, because you've got a 3D effects card. Oh boy, this thing does not have enough RAM though. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Alright, so let's... Oh boy. Oh boy. Did I just crash it? I just crashed it. Nice. Good. Good. We're off to a good start. This is part of the reason I didn't recommend any of these boards. This one's been very temperamental. Very temperamental. This is just with a Pentium 133. .386SX says that the temperamental is the Compaq way. Yeah, for real. For real. Let's dump fraps. We probably don't need that. It's probably not helping things. And I did not enable GL Flash Blend. There we go. Flash Blend 0. If you want to know what this does, GL Flash Blend 0 turns the weapon flashes back into the way they're supposed to look, like from DOSQuake, instead of being the weird yellow orbs. Let's try that again. Okay. Go to start map. Turn on mouse look. Hey, look at that. It functions. Hooray. It's not actually that much faster because a Pentium 133 is just not that quick. But let's do quick time demo. See if it'll get through it. And it does! 40 frames per second instead of 32. Hooray! We are not even we're not even getting close to what this Voodoo 3 can do. But yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We'll take 40 frames per second. Let's use this as our benchmarking platform. Let me turn off fraps, because I think that's probably what was giving us trouble. I'll just toss it. I don't need it. Okay, so let's do the classic upgrade, going from the Pentium 133 to a Pentium MMX. I think this can... It should be able to support the 233. I think it's got a 3.5x multiplier. We'll take a look in a sec. It apparently thinks it has soft power off, but it doesn't. Alright, so... flip over to my desk cam. There we go. So my little shelf full of CPUs. We've got quite a few interesting ones to try in here. Where is the... there it is. Pentium MMX. Alrighty, so pop this off of here. Yes, yes, yes. No thermal paste on this one, it's just a Pentium 133. The 233 is getting the thermal paste though, that's for sure. There we go. Put this back in the tower of CPUs. We've got some weird ones to check today. Ryzen MP6. Several Cyrixes. I've got the crazy one that did all those megahertz last time. I don't think we're going to get that kind of performance out of this, but we can try it. What else? Oh yeah, I have several K62s in various states. So I'm more than happy to just throw one in this board and see if I can get it to run at 6x multiplier. Because we've got access to a 2x on the board, which means you plug a K6 into it, or K62, you get a 6x multiplier, which should give you a 400 megahertz K62 on a board that really wasn't designed to take 400 megahertz CPUs. That sounds exactly like what I want to do. This cooler doesn't make great contact, so my normal technique of just a little tiny blob doesn't work real well. There we go. All right. We are connected. Now, if I just boot it up now, we'll get a Pentium 2 at 133, which isn't really what we want. So, we gotta set some jumpers. Voltage jumpers are over here on the board, and then multiplier jumpers are way back here, right underneath the power cable. You can barely see them, they're red. They're not red on the default board, on the board as it comes from Compaq. I don't even know if they're present on the board as it comes from Compaq. I imagine they don't want you changing them. But let's do, I believe the MMX is 2.8. So that is all jumpers open. So there we go, voltage jumpers are open. And then we need 3.5x, right? Can't do math today. I can barely speak today, so it's like 6 times 3.5 should get us, yeah, 233, perfect. So 3.5, a little they're falling off there. We've got a little silk screen on here, right here, with the multipliers. That is all jumpers open 3.5x. So we'll just move this jumper. Just do it by feel because you can't really see. Oh, come on. No. Get back on the pin. Come on. Doing the well-loved and time-honored technique of taking the jumper and just hanging it off one of the pins in order to set it to open and not lose the jumper. Because I tell you, if I take a jumper off of the motherboard, it's not getting back on that board. It sure as heck isn't. Alright, so let's boot this up. We should have a Pentium MMX at 233. Excellent. You know what we're going to run on this. Speed sis. Oh yeah. Looking good. 233.22. There's that level 1 cache. So the big conceit with the MMX Pentiums, right? Because Intel had this whole ad campaign that MMX made your computer faster. So you drop in an MMX Pentium and suddenly your computer's faster for some reason. It's gotta be the MMX, right? Nothing was written to use MMX until many years after they started being released, well into the Pentium 2 era. Because mostly the instructions weren't super useful. They helped with like integer matrix math, which not super helpful. But what the MMX Pentiums did have was double the level 1 cache, and that definitely made things go faster. Especially like considering the number of these boards I've seen on eBay that don't have their coast modules, assuming they came from Compaq that way, that like the coast module was an option. Yeah, you double your level 1 cache on your processor, that's a huge upgrade. That's a huge speed boost. Alright, so let's do a little quick, and we'll hop into Windows. See what ye olde Pentium can do. Much faster. .4 FPS. So now we're doing in software just about what we were getting with the Voodoo acceleration on the 133. So let's see what we get with the Voodoo. Windows has updated our configuration files. Just because we have a Pentium with MMX. Curious. Ha, no fraps for you. I love that I uninstalled it and it did not remove it from the startup folder. That's great. Beautiful. Okay. I mean, immediately the 3D effects logo is smoother, so that's a good sign. We are still fighting the 16 megabytes of RAM, though. Let's see. Let's just walk around and see how it is. Oh, yeah. Way smoother. Way smoother. Alright, let's see what she does in a time demo. Lots of loading hitches. I'll run this a second time so we can get a smoother number. But that's fast. That is 58.6 FPS. Just shy of 60. Just shy. Let's run it one more time and see without the loading stutter if we get a total 60. Tima's like, hey, maybe add some RAM. Yeah, I don't have a lot of FPM DIMMs. Ooh, that big loading stutter at the end killed it. Come on, you can do this. So, I don't know if you missed it at the beginning, but this board doesn't use SDRAM. This is fast page mode, and the DIMM slot on it is for a fast page mode DIMM, and I have no idea what voltage it needs, if it needs 5 volts or if it needs 3.3 volts or 2.8 volts. I have like 4 FPM DIMMs in the entire apartment. 2 of them are in my PowerMac 7200. The other 2, I have no idea if they'll work in this machine. And I'd rather not fry the DIMM or fry the board finding out if they work or not. So there we go. So once we eliminate all of the loading stutter, we can actually crest 60 FPS. So an average of 61.5. Not bad. Not bad. We've gone, well, we've added, what, 50% to our score? From 40 FPS to 60 FPS? Not bad at all. Not bad at all. I think we can go faster. I think we can go faster. Oh, what should we use to go faster? So we're at a clock speed limit right now at 233 because the board, it's only got enough multiplier jumpers for up to 3.5x, and it's stuck at 66 megahertz. We can't even use a 75 megahertz or 83 megahertz clock. So like, as much as I would love to do like the Ryze MP6. A lot of the Ryze's performance increase comes from the fact that it runs on a 100 megahertz frontside bus by default, which is great. 100 megahertz with 2x multiplier, that makes for a pretty efficient chip. It's a little bit less efficient on a 66 megahertz bus with a 3x multiplier. They actually end up being a little bit slower than actual Pentiums. So I think what we should do is try one of the K62s. Maybe, before we do this, we can look at my vanilla K6, which is, oh, only a 200. let's underclock the Pentium MMX and put it to 200 megahertz, and we'll put it head to head with a classic AMD K6, 200 megahertz. See how it does. And then we'll pull out the big guns, the K6 too, with its hidden 6x multiplier. Let's see, we need 3x multiplier is 3 and 4. So that's going to be the top jumpers there. 1 and 2, yeah, they are. Get that jumper out of the way so I can get at the other one. I know why the jumpers are here, like these closed pins on the CPU, you know, in the CPU socket, but like, did you really have to put it in the absolute worst place? Did you really? Did it absolutely have to be right next to the heat spreader, right up against the expansion slots? There we are. Okay, so that should be 200. Hopefully that cache card is okay. Let's boot this up. Make sure we've got the right speed. Yes. Pentium MMX 200. And our cache is there, so that's good. I'm going to skip this. We'll do a little Quake. So software Quake at 200 megahertz. This needs 2.9 volts. Well within what this board can provide. This one's 2.2, but it's going to get 2.8. .8 FPS. It's not far off the 233, honestly. Really, once you have MMX on your CPU and you have that extra level 1 cache, like the 166, 200, and 233, kind of perform the same. So 42.8, and then we should be about, I think probably 58, 57 FPS in GL Quick. So let's boot into Windows. It is Nathan from Pixel Pipes. Hello, welcome to the stream. You must have heard there was a voodoo involved. Doing some CPU shenanigans today. Got an old OEM Compaq board. It's a socket 7, and running. We started out with a standard P54C Pentium 133. We're running a P55 Pentium MMX right now, 200 megahertz. We're going to compare it with a 200 megahertz K6. It's the original K6, not a K6-2. And then, of course, one of my questionable condition K6-2s. I have so many of these. But we're going to use its hidden 6x multiplier and push it up to 400 megahertz. See how the old Intel chipset takes to that. This board is pretty weird. We've got onboard S3 Trio 64 VGA, as well as onboard ESS audio, PCI audio from ESS, an audio drive. We've got a coast module, so cache on a stick. Which I think this is the only board I have that has a coast module. Alright. The problem is, the whole thing is fast page mode RAM instead of SD-RAM. And I have 2 candidate FPN DIMMs that I could put in this for more RAM, but I don't know if they're the right voltage, because I don't know what voltage this board needs, and I don't know what voltage the DIMMs are. So, in the interest of not frying the board and the RAM, we're just sticking with the onboard 16 megabytes. It's a little bit, not really enough RAM for Windows 98. Not really enough. So we turn on mouse look here. This should be basically the same as the 233. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Extremely playable. The Voodoo makes things very nice. But, yeah. Pentium 200 MMX and Quake, perfectly fine. Let's do a quick time demo, so we have a number for comparison. Yeah, no. Pixelwiped asks, not even EDO RAM. No, not even EDO. It's fast page mode. That's not bad. 55 FPS. I'm going to run it one more time, make sure we get the loading stutters pulled out. So we got 61.2 on the 233. Shooting for 57 on the 200. That's about what it should be. There we go. 57.8. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Now, hope everyone's ready for a little bit of disappointment. K6 was a really impressive CPU. But for gaming, at least the games that were available, in 1997, not so much. Not so much. Don't get me wrong, I love the K6. K5, K6, K7 Athlon, phenomenal CPUs. I don't think anybody, let alone Intel, ever expected AMD to have the amount of success that they had with their CPU line. Terrific. It's absolutely terrific. But, everything was optimized for the Pentium, so it was tough to compete. Alright, so let's pop this out of here. There's our slightly goopy now Pentium MMX. And the K6 goes in this way. Oh, do you have bent pins? Darn it. It does. Riveting television as I try and unbend some pins without a mechanical pencil at hand. Ah, blast it. I thought this one was okay. It's got one on the edge here. I think that should do it. Let's zoom in on the desk cam. Y'all can watch me struggle to put this in. Nope, we've got one more in the middle of it. Just doesn't want to go in there. These are like the softest CPU pins I have ever touched. Jeez. You look at them wrong and they bend. Pulled out this USB drive to like try and lever them around. No, I just use my fingernail. They're not that strong. The best way to do this is either with a tool with a straight edge, so you can just like bend a whole bunch of pins all in to the right orientation right away at one shot, or a mechanical pencil, especially one of the ones with like the metal cylinder for the lead to flow down. Really great for unbending pins. Ask me how I know. Okay. Please be enough. Let's get on with the show. There we go. Haha! Much better. Okay. Throw a little bit of extra paste on there. Don't need a ton, it's just a 200 megahertz. K6. Okay. Let's see if the cache modules decided that all that futzing is good enough for it to still work. Excellent, we have video. Switch over to the VGA cam. Speed this. Pickle is here. Hello, Pickle. Welcome back to the stream. There we go, that's more like it. See, the thing about the K6 is it's got a really, really great integer unit. Like, really great integer unit. Also, 32K of level 1 cache. Not bad. And it's running the level 2 cache in write-back, which the Pentium was not. There's some opportunities here for some better performance. As y'all probably know, since it's been written about a lot since the K6 was invented many, many, many years ago, it doesn't have a super pipelined floating point unit. So you can't stack up, you know, two specific instructions in the Pentium floating point unit. You could stack them, and they would execute through the pipeline together, running much faster than like running a floating point operation, waiting for it to go all the way through the floating point unit, then running the next floating point operation. The K6 had a shorter floating point unit. It didn't take as many cycles to complete most operations, but it was not pipelined. So, Quake, of course, Quake and Quake 2 have, hand-coded assembly in their rendering loops to optimize that instruction flow for the Pentium, and that does no good for a K6. The fun part, though, is what I found in a lot of my Socket 7 CPU testing that I've done previously. Quake 3 doesn't have that. That optimization loop is gone. It uses the, the fast invert square. That if you've, I think Dave's Garage did a video on it, like the voodoo that is the fast invert square code in Quake 3. But it's pretty agnostic to CPU architecture. Like, Cyrix's perform abnormally well in Quake 3, K6's perform abnormally well in Quake 3. In fact, K6's generally perform better per clock in Quake 3 than they do than Pentiums, like regular non-MMX or non Pentium 2 Pentiums. It's interesting. It's interesting. A lot of K6 fanboys back in the day, swore by the shorter pipeline length in the K6's floating point unit. The benefits didn't really materialize until the processor was obsolete. It's the unfortunate part. So we had what here, 42? I think 42.8 FPS on the Pentium 200. .1. So it's not bad. Like, this isn't Cyrix levels of bad FPU, but that is 5 less frames per second. It's 5 fewer, sorry. 5 fewer frames per second. And we're, that's approaching the Pentium 133, right? Like, when we ran the Pentium 3, we got, what was it? 32? 33? 32.7, I think? FPS? Now, where it should really shine, because that integer unit is super OP, is like in PC Player, which is, it does 3D, but it's all integer. So we should get a pretty healthy frame rate boost here. And yeah, 57.4 FPS. That's the fastest CPU we've tested in this today. Alright, so let's get into Windows, see how it does with the 3D accelerator under its belt. I missed that, Nathan, I'm sorry. Nathan was playing it up. Oh wait, there's a voodoo involved. Yeah, the mystery card here at the end in the one PCI slot that this board has is my Voodoo 3. Providing VGA and 3D duties. Since the onboard S3 kind of sucks at 3D. Mostly because it can't do it. Although its successor couldn't really do 3D either. Alright. Oh, that's chunky. Right, it's a K6, remember. This is not a K6-2. We don't have 3D now. We're doing, regular old floating point here. So let's do a map start. just play around a little bit with this, and yeah, like it's not Pentium 133 speeds, but it's definitely not as fluid as the Pentium 200. Let's see what we get. Da, 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 da. Wow, brain. Time demo. Okay. Ah, the word escaped my brain for a moment. Incredible. Just like with the Pentium, we'll run this a couple of times to clear out the loading hitches. I'll do some digging on this board at some point and find some more RAM for it. Since otherwise, it's a fine board. It's perfectly fine. That's 42.5 frames per second. So now we're getting, with a 3D accelerator, we're getting what we were getting in software rendering on the Pentium. So we'll rerun this. Get those loading hitches out of there. Harney Barrow says, I just learned last night about the fast Doom source port, which lets Doom run even smoother than vanilla. Yeah, one of the conceits about Doom, I mean, remember, Doom came out really early. It was like, I mean, first-person shooters for many years were called, Doom clones for a reason. But it ran at half the refresh rate of the monitor in DOS. And, in Mode X in DOS, 320 by 200, you were running at 70 hertz. So Doom runs at 35 frames per second at maximum. And yeah, Fast Doom removes that limit. Smooth Doom is a thing of beauty. I remember the first time I actually got GL Boom to work. So I don't remember what card I was running it on, but to have hardware accelerated Doom running at 60 FPS was pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. It was a good time. So yeah, we've got 43.7 FPS with the K6. So not as fast, obviously, than as the Pentium, because most games in this era, were optimized. Their floating point code was optimized for the Pentium's floating point unit, and the little bit of extra performance you could eke out of the Pentium. However, AMD's solution for this, one was their own instruction set called 3D Now, but also lots and lots of clock speed. Lots and lots of clock speed. This is a K62 400 AFQ. Doesn't really matter what K6 it is. Most of these K6s are pretty similar. There's a couple of special ones. I have a few. This one's not particularly special, but this is pretty much the fastest that the vanilla K62s went. This is a 550 AGR. The fun part about K6, or the K62, because AMD was producing these specifically as upgrade processors, obviously they wanted people to buy into their Super Socket 7 platform, right? But if you couldn't, if you had something like this, you could still use a K62 as an upgrade processor, because they hid a 6x multiplier on this. Normally, in the world of Socket 7, not Super Socket 7, we've got, a couple of multiplier select lines that you can toggle on and off, and that's what those jumpers on the board do. So we've got 3 on this one that give us from 1.5x multiplier up to the 3.5x multiplier. And then on Super Socket 7 it added, is it 1 or 2 more? I forget if it was 4 total or 5 total, but you get up to a 5.5x multiplier officially on Super Socket 7. But of course the K62 had more in the tank than just 550 megahertz, and AMD knew it. So if you set one of these K62s, and it's pretty much any K62 honestly, to 2x multiplier, it interprets it as a 6x and runs at 6 times the front side bus rate. you can, I mean, it doesn't have to be a 400 megahertz K6. This works on, I think, the 333s and the 350s as well, so you can overclock them using the hidden multiplier on a 66 megahertz frontside bus. And then, of course, something like this 550 AFD, you can use it as a 6x multiplier on a 100 megahertz bus to get to 600 megahertz. So what we're going to do is run this on 66 megahertz frontside bus, because that's all this motherboard can do, times 6 for 400 megahertz. See what she'll do. Let's see what she'll do. And like, Intel, you know, wanted these clone CPU manufacturers to go away. They were ruining their fun by making hyper-competitive products for low prices. But honestly, like, Ryze and IDT with the Win chips and Cyrix, really, I think they were done in by how good the K62 was. Just how good this processor was and how many systems you could fit it in. As you're going to see here, how tolerant it is to overvolting, because it asks for 2.2 volts, and the lowest this board will give it is 2.8. So it's going to get 2.8. The thing about that, though, is like you can throw these CPUs into a wide range of boards, and they'll just work. Oh, I have to get this out of here now. Made the choice to push it in there with bent pins. But let's get that out of there. Without maybe bending more pins, maybe? Be nice. There we go. Jeez. Okay. So this is the 400 AFQ. I don't know where this one came from. It's not in the best shape, but it should work fine. No bent pins, amazingly. Let's set that voltage to 2.8. I think we were on 2.9 for the Pentium. I don't think I ever set it back for the K6. 2.8. Oh, I did set it. Okay. We're at 2.8. That's the minimum the board will do. And let's set, before I put the IHS on here, or before I put the heatsink fan on here, let's set it to 2x. What does that need? 2x multiplier needs 1 and 2, and that's it. Okay. Easy enough. Much easier without the heatsink in the way. Okay. So, throw a little bit more heatsink paste on there. Although it should be fine, we'll see. Just a real thin layer, because this heatsink doesn't make superb contact. There we go. We are on. Now we've got a gaming PC. Let's boot this up and see if it blows up. Hey. That's a good sign. Maybe. Unless the BIOS is like, what are you doing to me? Let me reseat that cache stick. That's usually the problem. Oh, this is the worst. By the way, cache on a stick. That's all Coast stands for. Cache on a stick. Okay, let's see if that works. It's one of those. Ian Scott says you can hit escape on the Compaq screen to see the BIOS. It's one of those. I think when I was setting this up, I think I hit every single key I know, like escape, F1, F2, F10, F8, delete. One of those worked. I don't know which one it was. I think it may be rejecting the K62. Ooh. It might have something to do with it detecting it as a K5. That might be what's going on. I didn't think this thing even supported K5s. Let me try my other K6 see if it's... This one's just not playing nicely today. It is in pretty beat up shape, so... I know this 550 AVR is good. AGR is good. Throw a little paste on there. Of course, if you want to see it try and run a CPU, it's definitely going to reject. There we go. Okay. I've got the final revision of the K62. The K62 Plus. This has on-die level 2 cache. These are wild. Play with that in a minute, maybe. Let's see if this will go. I think this BIOS just doesn't like the K62. I don't believe you. You say entering setup, I don't believe you. Bummer. Bummer, bummer. Let's see what BIOS version I've got on here. 6.0.I. Sure, that's a normal BIOS number. 6.0.I. Retro Web. Do you know about BIOSes for this? No BIOSes available. Well, let's throw the Win chip in it and see what happens. It's not going to be nearly as fun, but it does also have 3D Now support. See if it'll run even, because I think it needs a ridiculous amount of voltage. Yeah, it wants 3.5 volts. I think this will only do 3.3, but let's find out. The other thing is, Win chips have some weird multipliers. I don't think this is the one with the fractional multipliers, but I don't think they're normal. Maybe they are. It just says 3 by 66 megahertz. Let's see. Haha! Ryzen 9 says Win chip. Yes, indeed. This is the IDT Win chip. In fact, this is a Win chip 2, which is why it has 3D Now support. This is actually kind of a cool little chip. If you're familiar with the VIA C-series processors, this is their predecessor. IDT made Win chip accelerators for several years, and then sold or somehow was folded into VIA. I don't remember if VIA bought their Centaur CPU division or what, but they wound up at VIA and basically kept making the same CPU for like 10 years. In the context of 1997, 1998, or in this case I think 99, it's actually a pretty clever chip. Having 3D Now support in something like this is like half the power usage of a normal Pentium, or a Pentium MMX. So even with the die shrink, this uses less power. And you get, like I said, you get 3D Now support, and it's a pretty decent 3D Now implementation. If you run this with like 3D Now enabled Quake 2, it sees a similar speed up to the K62, which is impressive. I'm not going to put any additional goop on this heatsink, because this should be fine. It doesn't make that much heat. And we are undervolting it anyway. Okay, so we need to turn up the volts, which is 1, 2, and 5, 6 set. I wonder if this will do 3.5 if you close all the jumpers. That's the one that's missing. Be interesting. And we need to set our... Oh, I did it again. We need to set this to 3.5, or to 3x. 3x is 3/4 only. Oh, why do I do this to myself? Okay, 3/4. Get that other jumper. Put it where it's supposed to be. Now, I don't actually know if this will run with the wind chip either. It's kind of a crapshoot, but hopefully it does. Hey, that's a good sign. Switch over to it. Nope, doesn't like that either. Ah, blast it. Let me reseat that cache stick again. Come on, come on. Alright, I'm gonna YOLO this and close all the voltage jumpers. I hope this doesn't, like, send 12 volts to the processor. Darn it! Well, what an anticlimactic note to end on. That's a bummer. The wind chip is usually pretty compatible. A whole bunch of companies sold these. Let me switch over to the ACAM here. The whole bunch of companies sold the wind chip as like just a drop-in upgrade. You just plop it in your machine. It just works. Apparently not with this board. Again, bought this board about 6 months ago to see if it was you know, a worthy you know, specimen for building a retro PC out of. I guess unless you're doing like literally Pentium MMX, or K6, non-K6 too? No. It's unfortunate. It's super unfortunate. But it is an hour and a half now, and I think I'm going to shut down this stream. It's been a good one. I'm glad y'all came in to see an old Socket 7 board do its thing. I have a bonus for you in about a half an hour. The Cheap PC Challenge announcement video is going to go live. I finished that off this week, and it will be ready for everyone to view in about a half an hour. So hopefully y'all enjoy that, and I hope to see you enter your machine into the challenge. It's running from basically now until just before Halloween, October 30th. Because don't submit your builds on Halloween. I'm not gonna see them. I'm gonna be spending time doing fun things because Halloween's my holiday. But anyway, I think that's gonna do it for today. I hope everybody had fun. Pixel Pipe says, "Dim Compaq problems." Yeah, for real. And I don't know if there's no BIOSes available for this thing. I don't think there's any way to get these processors to run, unfortunately. But we're gonna end it there. Hope everybody has a good evening, and the rest of your weekend, I hope, is as equally pleasant. And yeah, be kind to yourself and others, and may the PC parts be ever in your favor. Have a great night.